Hello, I'm Haxi Myers-Belkin and you're watching Access Asia. Coming up in the show. With the UN accusing Burmese authorities of targeted persecution of the country's Rohingya Muslim minority, we meet the ultranationalist Buddhists who believe the Rohingya have no place in Burmese society. A gold rush in the Philippines has adults and children risking their lives diving into mud-filled swamps in search of the precious metal. And we take a look at the work of Chinese photographer Liu Bolin, whose self-portraiture as camouflage questions the place of the individual in an increasingly anonymous world. During Burma's half a century of military dictatorship, the country's Buddhist monks became a potent symbol of non-violent resistance. But with the demise of the junta, the country's major religious group witnessed the emergence of so-called radical Buddhists, monks with an ultranationalist agenda who advocate violence against groups they claim threaten Burma's national identity. In recent weeks, over 400,000 Rohingya have fled Burma into Bangladesh, with Buddhist militias accused of supporting ethnic cleansing of the Muslim minority. So just who are these extremist monks? France 24's Clovis Kazali takes a look.
These young monks are the new guard of radical Buddhism in Burma. Their school is linked to Mabata, an influential movement known for its ultra-nationalist stance and anti-Islam rhetoric. Banned by religious authorities, it remains powerful across the country and claims to have 10 million members. One of the teachers has spotted us. He's keen to justify the army's clearance operations against the Rohingya Muslim minority in Rakhine State. For that, he quotes a famous Frenchman, Napoleon.
You must remember this quote.
So the quote says, the world suffers a lot not because of the violence of bad people, but because of the silence of good people. The most important thing now is for the good people not to remain silent. France knows better than any other country the problems we're facing here. You too in France have many immigrants on your territory, especially from Muslim countries, and who are causing you many problems.
Northern Rakhine is under lockdown with ongoing violence. We were sent these amateur images by Rohingya activists. They show entire villages reduced to ashes. The army says the Rohingya themselves set fire to their houses. Over 400,000 civilians from the persecuted Muslim minority fled the violence to find refuge in neighbouring Bangladesh. This man firmly believes troops are doing nothing wrong. Accused of encouraging hate speech against the Rohingya, he was chief editor of Mabata's newspaper until it was banned by authorities. As we film his office and he's off camera, he reveals the strong ties between ultranationalists and the army. General Min Aung Hlaing, Burma's commander-in-chief, is accused by some in the international community of ordering ethnic cleansing against the Rohingya.
Many Rohingya, Bengali civilians, have attacked Burmese people in Rakhine State, and by doing this, they're providing support and taking part in terrorism. So I do not feel any sadness when I'm told that these terrorists are now being killed.
Here, crowds dislike international media and humanitarian workers. They are convinced foreigners and NGOs have a pro-Muslim bias that threatens the Buddhist nation, much to the despair of Zhao Min. This Rohingya politician has in his office pictures of Aung San Suu Kyi's father, who was Burma's independence hero. Zhao Min was once a close ally of the Nobel laureate. He spent 7 years behind bars when the two dared to openly oppose the military junta.
Why should he not know what's happening in a part of the country? I think she knows well. We don't see any better future unless there is some change in the policy of Myanmar government or international community came to rescue this Rohingya community.
Buddhist extremists are said to be taking part in the violence, helping security forces with the crackdown. Aung San Suu Kyi has refused to condemn the army that retains large powers in Burma. The Rohingya are bitterly disappointed in the lady who they once believed in.
To the Philippines now, where a modern-day gold rush is seeing hundreds of thousands of people risk their lives panning for the metal in makeshift, unlicensed mines. Gold may be big business, but for those at the bottom of the chain, it's dangerous and dirty work for little reward.
First, they have to walk deep into the forest with their rusty material on their back. What they're looking for are swamps like this one, where they'll be able to dig a pit in search of gold. The tunnel is 2 meters deep now, and methane is starting to surface. The only way to avoid being intoxicated is to fill the hole with water. Imandesco is the most experienced miner. He's the first to head into the tunnel.
I put this mask on to avoid the mud from going up my nose and into my eyes.
To breathe, these men use an air compressor linked to a thin plastic tube. Once his head's underwater, Iman's vision is completely blurred. At the bottom, he digs with his bare hands. One after the other, his colleagues pull bags full of clay and silt back up to the surface. After an hour, the gold miner finally comes back up with nothing.
It's exhausting. I'm so tired. The water is warm, almost boiling. The hole is now as deep as 4 times the size of a man.
Next to them, some miners just got lucky. They found gold ore 10 meters deep. The moment of truth has arrived. They need to wash the ore 10 to 20 times before finally small gold particles appear.
It's good news. Later on today, we'll all be really happy. We'll probably extract half or a whole gram of gold today.
A whole gram means they'll make 10 to 20 euros they'll then have to share. And for this sort of salary, they all say they're prepared to risk their lives.
This job is dangerous. From the start of the process, there are a lot of risks. The pit can collapse at any given time, for instance.
About a dozen people die in these makeshift, small-scale gold mines every year, yet the gold rush continues. Among those panning for gold are more than 1,000 children, according to Association Human Rights Watch. Russell is 8 years old. He's helping out at the surface. His older brother Kim has already dived down 10 meters into the mud.
I started when I was 9, and now I'm 14, almost 15.
The nearest town is Paracale. It's been nicknamed the City of Gold. But while these makeshift mines are illegal, gold dealers are everywhere, on every block. Behind this armoured window, the gold's melted and in most cases sent to the country's central bank. Alternatively, it ends up on the international black market.
Miners, unless they really stumble on a huge gold nugget, they don't make much. Those who make the most are the people at the end of the chain.
The Philippines now ranks among the world's top 20 gold producers. The country's said to contain the planet's second largest reserves, but many of these mining areas are still untapped.
Now, the work of Chinese photographer Liu Bolin is currently on show at the Maison Européenne de la Photographie here in Paris. The artist specialises in self-portraiture, although it's harder than you might expect to actually see him in his work. Alex Jennings has more.
You might struggle to see him at first, but look closely enough and you'll see a figure hiding in these photos. The living sculptor Liu Bolin, a master in the art of camouflage. But what's the use of being an invisible man? It all started in 2005, when Bolin's studio was demolished by the Chinese authorities in preparation for the Beijing Olympics. Fading into the background was a way of denouncing this system which frowned upon individuality. Ever since then, the theme of liberty is one that reappears in his works.
To begin with, I chose this method to express my own suffering. and to protest against the loss of my workplace. That was honestly the source of my inspiration, the basis behind the creative process.
Through his works, he also denounces society's frantic consumerism and the disastrous consequences it has on the environment. However, that didn't stop him from posing for a big fashion label, a perfume brand, or even a bank. He says he'll pose as anything, as long as the message is true to his beliefs. Here, the preparations for someone who is about to become the pieces of plastic washed up by the ocean. His assistants reproduce the background on his clothes, on his hands, and finally on his face. Liu Bolin will hold this pose for hours. His photos are never retouched, and his disappearing act always has a meaning behind it.
It's like he feels surrounded by the vastness of consumerism, and the fact he's hidden, it's like he's protecting himself from everything that surrounds him.
The environment's taking him over. He disappears into the landscape. It's as if the world's swallowing us, little by little.
What I'm trying to say is that in a developing society, we've got the impression that we're the strongest, that we are masters of everything, but that's wrong. It's nature that dominates everything.
Liu Bolin has had problems with censorship. In order to stay in China, he avoids any full frontal attack of the regime. Bit by bit, his works have evolved. Today, he is not the only subject of his photos. But Liu Bolin remains consistent in opening our eyes to the world.
Monet's garden in Japan's Kochi prefecture is a replica of the Impressionists' real garden here in France. But one thing you'll see here that you won't see in any of the artist's works are blue bees. The rare bee species is found in only a few places around the world and is said to bring good luck to anyone who catches a glimpse, meaning visitors to Kitagawa village are just as keen to seek out a blue bee as they are to look for Monet's famous lilies, although fans of all things blue won't be disappointed by those either. Blue water lilies flower in the garden from July to October. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for watching and see you again next week.